Welcome to the Freely Rooted Mama podcast. Where I am their mother, I make the choice.
Hello, mamas. Happy Thursday. Welcome back to another episode. Today, I'm talking about health tips for preparing for pregnancy. This is a question that many of you have actually asked me, really wanting to hear what I have done in my journey. So I'm going to go over that today. But I love this question so much because I feel like it's so important that we start thinking about conception before just deciding, hey, let's go for it. Really thinking about it 3 to 6 months at least before we decide that we're ready to have a baby. And this will not only help in the process of you conceiving, but this gives your baby the best start to a life possible. So just really excited to be talking about this topic today. I will try to keep it as short as humanly possible, but there's a lot of things that I kind of want to go over today. So I love this term. If you don't follow Dr. Cleopatra on social media, I would highly recommend it. She talks a lot about this concept of things to work on before deciding to conceive. And she calls this the trimester period. So trimester period is typically you want it to be 3 to 6 months before deciding that you're going to, before you start trying. For me, I had the amazing privilege because I've been in this holistic health space for so long of really getting to do that for 6 years. And so for me, that looked like in the clinic that I worked in, we ran a Dutch test, which is a hormone panel. We ran a gut test and we ran a heavy metal test. So of course I did all three of those on myself to A, understand my body more, but B, also help clients. And in that process, I discovered that I had a high heavy metal load, high in lead and mercury. My sex hormones were off. So I believe I had low progesterone, high toxic estrogen, which is related to the liver and the gut. And then I think my testosterone was normal. There's a lot of nuances when it comes to those three sex hormones, which the Dutch test and a consultation will help you decipher. But just in a big picture, that was kind of what's going on there. And then with my gut test, I had leaky gut and candida overgrowth. So I had a lot of things to work on, and I got to work on them for 6 years. Didn't take 6 years to really make progress with those, but just continually trying to keep those hormones in balance and making sure that I never got candida overgrowth again and making sure that my gut stayed healthy. And heavy metals take a lot of time to detox. So, and we're constantly coming in exposure with more toxins than we ever have in our entire life. So for me, detoxification is a lifelong process, but I went really hard those 6 years, knowing that I wanted to clear my body as much of that as possible before we decided to have children. So I was really fortunate in that way. And then, of course, in those 6 years, I also worked on lowering stress and really working on my mind and my mental and emotional health, therapy, really unpacking traumas, really just, learning to love myself and just lowering that stress, which is great because stress we know contributes to, high blood sugar, which affects your metabolism, your gut, your hormones, cortisol. If you are stressed out of your mind and you have high cortisol all day long, it's going to be really hard for you to have a baby. If you just think about it in terms of the olden days, if you are being chased by a tiger, all of your blood flow, all of your hormone production, your hormones are going to go through the roof because you've got adrenaline and cortisol. All your blood flow is going to go to your extremities to save you from this tiger. Your body is not in a space where it's oh, we're in massive danger. Let's, plop an egg and try to get you pregnant. It's not going to happen. In fact, we've had clients in the past that we've worked with that had infertility problems. Their hormones would come back looking pretty decent, surprisingly, except that cortisol and all of that was out of this world. And we would just tell them, if you could just learn to de-stress, this will probably be okay. And I don't want to oversimplify it because that's not the case for everyone, but cortisol plays a massive, massive role in helping you get pregnant. So just think about it in those terms. But that's what I did for 6 years. And so, during this trimester time, the 3 to 6 months before you try to conceive, you're really wanting to work on, there's also important, you're working on balancing hormones so that your body is ready to conceive. You're working on your gut microbiome because we know that the microbiome is so important, not only for your own health in producing your own hormones and neurotransmitters, but also because that microbiome is going to be passed down to baby. And then reducing toxic exposures, turning off gene expressions. There's always that old saying, right? Like my grandmother had it, my mom had it, so I'm going to have it. And then I'm going to pass it down to my child. Or, well, you're going to turn out just like me because I had it. Whatever I had it is. Could be obesity, could be thyroid conditions, could be many things. And yes, genes do play a role as we pass down, but we also know through epigenetics that we have the ability to turn genes on and off. We have the ability to turn those expressions on and off. And especially when it comes to when it comes to fertility, like you want to try to make sure as many of those genes that you don't want handed down are turned off. And so you can learn more about epigenetics through Dr. Bruce Lipton has a great talk on this, and I'll link it in the show notes below so you can kind of go and watch what is epigenetics and what is this newfound. Because I feel like a lot of people still don't know about epigenetics. We are still in this mode of, my grandmother had it, so I'm going to have it. And, genes are our destiny. And that's not exactly the case anymore. So I'll make sure to link that below. So ideally 3 to 6 months before conceiving, if not longer, if you have more time, even better. But 3 to 6 months before, here's some of the things that you're going to want to start doing. First thing, reducing toxic exposure. So this includes food, beauty products, cleaning products, your water sources, air purification, dental work, kitchenware, EMF protection. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but this is just like a general scope. So food, we know that food is sprayed with chemicals and glyphosate, which not only is a toxic exposure, but also ruins your gut microbiome. So really paying important attention to your food. Beauty products, cleaning products. I've talked about this on prior episodes. There's an app called Think Dirty. Go scan everything. You want to be below a 3, ideally. We know that those products contain hormone disrupting chemicals, phthalates, dyes, allergens, fragrances, all things that can wreck your hormones, add toxic exposure to your body, and they ruin your gut microbiome. So all things that we're trying not to do. Filtering your water sources. This is a huge contributing factor to heavy metal exposure. So we know that, again, I'm not going to go in the debates of everything, but we know that a lot of our water contains chemicals, fluoride, pesticides. It's disturbing. You can actually go, I think, and I've talked about the EWG before, but you can go to the EWG and look at if you live in a city, what your city water rating is, and they'll tell you. So make sure you're filtering your water. Lead has we all know about the stories that we've heard, like Flint, Michigan, with lead in the water. Yeah, it's bad. So we want to make sure that we're filtering our water, not only for sure our drinking water, but I would also highly recommend you filter your shower water, your bath water as well. Get a whole house filter if you can. In California, when we lived there, we didn't have a whole house filter, but we had a filter for our water system. And then we had a filter. I had a bathtub filter and a shower head filter in every bathroom. And so those are relatively like good price. I think like the bathtub filter is like $60 and it lasts you a year, maybe more. Same thing with the shower one. Just get something that removes all heavy metals and chemicals. And then air purification. We know that our air, we're constantly coming in contact with toxic exposures, whether that's mold, whether that's chemicals, dust, all those things like add up into our overall health. So we have the air doctor. I have 3 of them. I actually need to get one more for this room because it's so much bigger than our house in California. But just purifying the air, we have animals too. So I open that thing up like every month and it's disgusting. So making sure that you're breathing in clean air, which is also going to be really important for baby. Dental work. So if you have any amalgam fillings, which AKA mean you have mercury in your mouth, if you have anything like that, any metal in your mouth, you may want to consider getting that out. That metal, that mercury continues to leach. Again, you can go follow Living Well with Dr. Michelle. She's great. Dr. Jerry Curtola is great. There's a lot of good ones out there. Go look at IAMBD. I think that's the International Association of Biological Dentistry or something like that. I'll leave it in the show notes. but you can go look at what amalgam fillings do. There's a lot of studies that have been done on animals on what mercury does to the brain because your teeth are going to continue to leach and it's so close to the brain. Also, what it just continues to do to the gut microbiome. So, this is a time to go get some dental work done, analyze that, remove those babies. There's a whole protocol on how to remove amalgam fillings safely, but also just any other metal that might be in your mouth. Like, interestingly enough, I've been having this weird tooth pain for a while now. It kind of comes and goes. I had it really bad maybe 6 months into pregnancy with Isaac. And they had thought, well, maybe there's like an infection in there, but we don't want to clean it out because we don't want that infection to like filter through and affect baby. So they put some ozone into my gums to help like mitigate the pain. And then it went away and I had a baby. And anybody that's had a baby, you just know that like time flies. And then we moved. And so I kind of forgot about it. And then it came back. And so I went to the dentist. I went to a biological dentist here. And he's like, I think you have a metal crown that's like seeping into your gums. And it's, irritating the gums and an infection could be coming and going there. And so anyways, my long story short is I didn't think I had any metal in my mouth. And then here I have it like this metal crown. So I removed it and put on I think we used ceramic or something. Just those are types of things like that metal was probably leaching, didn't know it. That's obviously affecting my health, probably affected Isaac's health a little bit. I'm not going to take on guilt for it because I didn't know, but those are things that I would start to work on if you had the time to work on those things. Then kitchenware. So like things like your pots and your pans, if you've got any Teflon or aluminum, that leaches into your food. It's heavy metals. I've seen it on many tests where aluminum will be high. So those are types of things that you want to work on. Cast iron is great. Ceramic is great. I can leave some resources if you guys want in the show notes. And then EMF protection, we know that cell phones and constant Wi-Fi have an effect on the human body. So just little things that you can do, like I have an EMF blocker on my phone, or you can get like a case that you can put your phone in. Don't ever put your phone like if you are pregnant directly on your belly or in like your pockets near your, reproductive organs, especially men that put their cell phone in their pockets. That can play a direct role in like your sperm. So don't be doing that. If you have a laptop, I use a EMF protecting pad so that if I sit it on my lap, I'm not again getting any kind of EMFs from my laptop into baby or into the reproductive organs. So just simple little things. You don't have to go hog wild. Of course, if you want and you have the resources, they have like EMF blocking shield paint that you can put on. You can get an EMF cage that you put over your router at night, especially at night while you're sleeping. If you can put your phone in airplane mode or keep your phone in a different room, if you can put, the router shield on, those type of things are great little hacks to help reduce the EMF exposure. So that's kind of working on toxic exposure. Then, of course, hormones. We know that 1 in 6 people will struggle to conceive. So, and I find it so interesting because I feel like the stories that I have heard where people are having a hard time conceiving, when they go the more traditional route, nobody ever talks to them about their gut microbiome. Nobody ever talks to them about heavy metals, and nobody ever talks to them about, let's really understand what the heck is going on with your hormones. And that's for the man and the woman. I'm talking about if you're in a heterosexual relationship, but you guys play 50-50 role in this. So the men need to have their hormones tested as well. I'll just kind of keep that part brief. For the microbiome. So we know that, the microbiome and your hormones kind of go hand in hand because we know that our microbiome, our gut microbiome, really helps produce hormones and neurotransmitters. So working on that microbiome, but we also know that the microbiome, the gut microbiome and our reproductive organ microbiome communicate as well. So there's the brain gut connection, but there's also the gut reproductive organ connection. And our reproductive organs, so if we're just talking about the vagina for a second, they have their own microbiome. So it's a little bit different where our gut microbiome, we want it to be very diverse in bacteria. We want a lot of those diverse bacterias to help just counterbalance everything. With the vagina or the vaginal microbiota, we want the microbiota of a healthy, non-pregnant woman in the vagina contains a variety of lactobacillus species. These bacteria are thought to provide a healthy, supportive environment that is conducive to conception. So, really working on making sure that the microbiota of your vagina is healthy and ready to have a baby. And just here's some like little interesting things. I went down like so many rabbit holes of studies the other day. The lactobacillus bacteria produce lactic acid to maintain the pH of their environment, and they dominate the microbiota of the vagina by protecting it from harmful intruders. Our vaginal microbiome is influenced by changing levels of sex hormones, too, which can be regulated by our gut, which I've already kind of said, and the health of our immune system, physiological stress, antibiotics, smoking, etc., all play a role in shaping the diversity of our gut microbiota, but they are also linked to the health of our vaginal microbiota. I feel like I just said microbiota and vagina 8,000 times. So, all that to say, focusing on the gut microbiome is super important because it will affect the reproductive organs as well. And then you kind of know what kind of bacteria that we're looking for the vagina. This is also true actually, before I go into male, one thing that will contribute to your microbiomes being out of whack, whether I'm talking about the gut or the vagina, is if you've been eating high sugar, high processed foods, if you've been on antibiotics, steroids, birth control, all of those things are going to heavily impact your microbiome, as does like toxic exposures, like I listed earlier. But if you're sitting here and you eat you eat out a lot, you eat a lot of fast food, you eat a lot of processed foods, you've been on birth control for the last 10 years, you know that you've been on multiple rounds of antibiotics as a child, this would be like a key indicator of like, if you're nodding like, yep, that's me. Okay, it's time to do some serious work on your gut health to prepare you for having a baby. And not only for your own health is it's going to be helpful, but it's going to directly impact baby's health and baby's future health. So, super important time period. If this was you and you've already have kids, there's no guilt in it, like you didn't know. And so now would be the time where I would focus on yourself and your children and getting them working on their microbiome and repairing their gut. So it's not too late, but if you haven't had children yet, it's the perfect time to really help set them up for success in terms of their gut health and their microbiome. And then let's go to the male really quick. So with your male, if you are in a heterosexual relationship and you have a male partner, they play a 50-50 role. I feel like, when infertility comes up, it's always like the woman's thing and the man's like, I've got sperm and it's working. Okay, but how healthy are those sperm? Is anybody looking into that? So I don't think in the mainstream world, we're really looking at that. But the male sperm also plays an important role in this, and the health of the male sperm also plays a huge role in this. So a couple things to note. If you haven't read the book Countdown by Dr. Shauna Swan, the whole title is called Countdown: How Our Modern World is Threatening Sperm Counts, Altering Male and Female Reproductive Development, and Imperiling the Future of the Human Race. If you want a quick debrief on what she goes into, she has a podcast with Joe Rogan. You can listen to it. It's probably long because it's Joe Rogan, but it would give you like a overview of the book if you're not much into sitting down and reading books like this. But it is very concerning. And in it, she talks about how she predicts that by 2045, we will have a median sperm count of 0. Exposure to toxins, especially plastics and phthalates, should be scaring the shit out of people. So, toxins, phthalates, what are all those found in? Foods, plastics, beauty products, cleaning products. I mean, they're found everywhere. So, this is why I am crazy when it comes to like the type of products that we're using in our home on an everyday basis, because I now have a boy that I hope, if he chooses, one day has children as well. I want him to be healthy and able to do that. And if we don't change something, like we are going to come to a point where our male population is going to have a very hard time playing their 50% in the role of having children. So, yes, it's equally as important for the male. The other thing that I found is that the semen microbiota plays obviously an equal role in fertility. And I can't remember, I couldn't find, well, I probably did find and I just skipped over it, but I couldn't find exactly what kind of bacteria the semen needs. But we do know that the semen has its own microbiota that plays an important role in can it swim up and fertilize an egg? So men, if you're married to a man, if you're having a baby with a man, they need to sit down and they need to work on, okay, they need to go scan all their beauty products. Are they using toxic soaps, toxic beauty products, like hair gels, toothpastes? They need to work on their mouth too. So do they have amalgam fillings? Do they have metal in their mouth? All that plays a role in the microbiome. Are they working on their microbiome? Are they eating a high processed, high sugar diet? Do they have high stress? High stress will absolutely contribute to how their hormones are working. Do they exercise, which we know, especially for males, exercise plays a good key role in making sure that they have healthy testosterone. So all of these things are super important to consider when deciding that you want to have children. So I hope this kind of gave you a global idea of some categories of things to work on and for both partners to work on, not just the female. I find that really frustrating that it really comes down to, females are a much more complex, we have a much more complex system. We have a much more complex hormone system. So yes, there can often be an imbalance in how our hormones are doing that could be affecting the ability to have babies, but males play just an important, and even if he has nothing to do with the fact that if you are struggling to get pregnant, even if he's like 100% great, he's like, yep, I've been working on my microbiome, my hormones are great, blah, blah, blah. It's still important for him because the health of that sperm fertilizing that egg is still going to carry, you want that sperm to be healthy. And that's going to play a key role in how baby comes with their health in terms of like their microbiome and things like that, genes, gene expressions, all that kind of stuff. So, hope this made sense. If you have more questions, you know where to find me. You can find me on Instagram. If you loved today's episode, I'd love if you left a review and subscribed to the podcast.